Marinero, the Sick Podcast. Today's show, I can't wait to talk about it because it's going to be quite the debate. The stats say that through 7 seasons, Tampa Bay Lightning goalie Andrei Vasilevskiy is better than former Montreal Canadiens great Hockey Hall of Famer Patrick Roy. Today, we're going to discuss if he's actually better. And joining me right now, one of the gurus of hockey goaltending is a hockey goaltending coach, Eli Wilson. How you doing, bud?
Good. How are you doing?
Very, very well. The show's brought to you by Essentia, the world's only natural memory foam mattress. Go to myessentia.com/sickpod and use code sickpod for a free pillow with your purchase. Essentia, beyond organic sleep. If people were sleeping after hearing me say that the stats say that Vasilevskiy is better than Roy was in his first 7 seasons in the National Hockey League, they are awake now and we got their attention. First and foremost, Eli, I want to formally introduce you to everyone. You are a hockey goalie guru. You're a coach. You run your own clinics, and you've worked with many, many hockey goalies. Rattle off some names of some of the guys you've worked with.
Devin Dubnyk, Carey Price, Tuukka Rask, Tim Thomas, Corey Schneider. I've had quite a few guys over the years playing the National Hockey League.
That's a pretty nice list.
Thanks.
Okay, so this is what the stats say. Now, I'm curious, do you like to compare guys from different eras, or is that something that you kind of stay away from?
I think it's very difficult to compare guys from different eras. The game is constantly improving. The position is constantly improving as well. So to compare guys from now to guys that played 20 years ago is very difficult. Of course, without those guys doing what they've done in the past, it would be impossible for the guys to do what they're doing today as the game has grown over the years. So one thing that I like to do if we're, get into these type of conversations is look at the separation between the players rather than comparing the guys from today to the past. And I think that, in each generation, there's been guys that have sort of separated themselves from the group over the years. And obviously, Patrick did was completely separate from the group that he played with and against, until Dominic Hasek came into the game and even took it to a next level from there.
All right, so let's talk about when Patrick Roy did play the game. You mentioned Dominic Hasek, Martin Brodeur. I think, it's safe to say that if you poll people and you ask them back in the late 80s, the early 90s, even the 2000s, who would be the top goalies in the National Hockey League, these 3 guys would be at the top of everyone's list. You talked about Patrick Roy separating himself from the rest. Did he separate himself from Hasek and Brodeur? Or are they all in that discussion?
No, I think they're all in the discussion, but I think the innovations that Patrick Roy made with Francois to the game of hockey, not just to himself playing, but to the position itself, really took the game and the position to a next level altogether. And, Patrick for many, many, many years was better than everyone else.
You obviously are talking about the butterfly style, of course, which he somewhat perfected in the National Hockey League. How have styles changed? Like back in the day, Patrick played the butterfly. We know Marty Brodeur played probably a little bit more of a hybrid. Now we're talking about Andrei Vasilevskiy, who most consider to be the best goalie in the world right now. What kind of style does he play?
I mean, he has a lot of those things are combined in his game. I mean, obviously has a great base as a butterfly goaltender. He's able to read the game very well, see the game in front of him, see it develop. And I think that's one of the biggest things that he brings to the table. So, I wouldn't consider or categorize him into one specific style. I mean, there's times where he's passive, there's times where he's aggressive. He does things a little bit different than a lot of guys, but I wouldn't say that he's categorized just into one specific style.
If you'd like to pick up a jersey of any of these goalies that we talked about or their teams that they used to play with or do play with, sportbuffshop.com for all of your officially licensed sports apparel and more. Use code SICK15 for 15% off on all of their items. Vasilevsky, has he, like Patrick Roy did up until Brodeur and Hasek, distanced himself from the group as well, in your opinion?
I don't think it's the same as it was with those guys. I mean, how many Hart trophies and Vezina trophies did Hasek win? I think Hasek not only was at his top of his game, not only was he the best goalie in the world, he was the best player, period. And I don't think it was even close. He just dominated. I mean, he had basically invented the goals against average under 2, which was a huge separation, and he was so good for so long. But I think there's so many good goaltenders in the game, top to bottom, and obviously Andre plays on a very, very good team, the best team in hockey, and it's been the best team for a long time as well. He's a big part of that team, but he's a part of the team when Hasek played in Buffalo and had those years. I mean, he had some good players on the team, but he was the difference maker every single night with that team.
I think we can agree, and you haven't said it yet, but in the last 35 years in the National Hockey League, I believe Patrick Roy is the one who had the best career. I think Marty Brodeur is right there with him or behind him. But I think, albeit for a shorter period of time, the most dominant goalie I've ever seen in my lifetime, when he was at his best, I think Dominic Hasek's best, with all due respect to the other goalies, was better than their best. Are we on the same page?
I agree.
Yeah. Wow. It's not too many people that agree with me, especially when you host a show or a podcast out of Montreal. I'll tell you that right now.
I mean, he when he like you said, when he was at the peak and the prime of his career, he was the best player in the game, period.
All right. When was it easier for a goalie to dominate? In the 80s, the 90s, or now in 2021?
That's a loaded question. I'm not sure if it's ever been easier, but I do feel that the way the game is coached and these goalies have acquired skill sets as we move forward. Now the players are working more one-on-one on their skills. But I'm going to say through the mid 2000s to the late 2000s, goaltenders had a huge advantage. Just because of the amount of work that those guys were putting in the summers and developing, evolving, and changing their game. And then now the players have seemed to have gone to the one-on-one coaching in the off seasons to take their games and skill sets to the next level. So I would say in the 2000s, goaltenders were very, very dominant.
Pretty cool that you and I are on the same page, probably 7 or 8 minutes into this chat. So Cherry River Hard Seltzer, only 90 calories, natural flavors, no preservatives. Now available in Quebec grocery stores and at the beer store. Eli Wilson, here's to you. Cheers. I got to get you some of this. All right.
Yeah.
I want to put some stats out there so that we can compare some stats. Patrick Roy's first 289 games, 158 wins. Andre Vasilevsky's 302 first games, 190 wins. 82 losses for Roy, 83 losses for Vasilevsky. 6,973 saves for Roy, 8,435 saves for Vasilevsky. 900 save percentage for Roy, 920 save percentage for Vasilevsky, 13 shutouts for Roy, 26 shutouts for Vasilevsky. How much do you, and I guess we have no other choice, but I'm curious to hear what you're going to say. How much do you look at their respective teams in front of them and the overall strength of their respective teams before actually going any further here?
Oh, I do for sure. Vasilevsky has the best team in hockey that plays in front of him, and he plays behind the best team in hockey every night. So I would think from that standpoint, it's really tough to compare the two. I mean, if you look at the numbers, it sort of answers the question that he has been more successful, but hockey is also a team game. And, if you look at one specific stat, for example, shutouts, how many shutouts are guys having in this current era in compared to in the 80s when it was, a little bit harder to have a shutout at the time. So, I mean, some of the stats.
But hold on a second. Was it harder to have a shutout at the time back in the 80s and the 90s? Because you talked about Dominik Hasek having a goals against average of under 2, and I get it. He's Dominik Hasek.
Yeah.
But take a look at Marty Brodeur's New Jersey Devils and the way his team played under all those coaches, under the tutelage of Lou Lamoriello was the general manager, but especially in the Jacques Lemaire era. I don't know if a team's ever played stingier, tighter, and trapped more than that team ever before. So, was it really that tough?
I would think you'd have to look at it at the numbers overall to find out that there were when was there more shutouts. I mean, if a guy had 3 or 4 shutouts in a season, it was a big deal. Back in the late 90s and into the 2000s, now what do guys end up with at the end of the season? In the last few years, I mean, some of those stats have changed.
How about equipment? Let's talk about, first of all, from a player's point of view, and then we'll talk about the goalie equipment in a second. But how about the players? Lighter sticks than ever before, resulting in harder shots than ever before, which leads me to believe the degree of difficulty in stopping pucks today in 2021 has to be tougher than it was back in the 80s and in the 90s when the sticks were not as light and not as good.
Yeah, it's definitely, the game is faster. The game is definitely more skilled top to bottom throughout your lineup. And you've always had top players on every team being able to shoot the puck with, regardless of the technology that they have in their sticks and their equipment. But I think now top to bottom, everyone on the team can shoot the puck with accuracy and with control and with velocity. So I think that, the players have a huge advantage over the players that played in the past as the equipment evolves, as their training evolves, as their physical conditioning evolves, as the game itself is coached different and taught differently. So I think the game has improved all around, not only with forwards and defensemen, but with goalies as well. So we have more to combat what they're bringing at us than they did back in the day. And I think a lot of this stuff has to do with the skills that the goalies have acquired and learned from a young age and understand how to move correctly in the net. And it's a skating-based position where before it was a save-based position. So you kind of hope that you were in position and tried as hard as you can to execute a save of some kind. Now all that stuff is calculated and controlled and put into different themes and categories and taught in a specific order where you're able to be in position more often than goalies were back in the day.
You can place your bets on MyBookie. Go to mybookie.ag/the Sick Podcast. Use code SickPicks for a 50% deposit bonus. Bet, win, get paid. Speaking of placing your bets, you can already place them on who's going to win the Stanley Cup. Is it going to be Tampa Bay and Andrei Vasilevsky for a third year in a row, or are you going to go with an underdog pick? All right. Equipment for goalies. I saw a picture of Andrei Vasilevsky in the playoffs. I don't know if I've ever seen a goalie look bigger before. Now, let me preface it by saying he is a big man to begin with, right? He is 6'3" and probably well over 220. His goalie coach, Franz Jean, explained it to us that the reason why Vasilevsky looked bigger than Price is that some goalies like to tuck in their chest protector, of course, put the suspenders on top. He likes to have the chest protector out. The regulations are the same for everyone, mind you, right? There are certain equipment regulations that everyone has to follow, but goalies are looking bigger now than ever before. So would that mean advantage Roy, who played with smaller equipment and looked smaller than Vasilevsky does today?
Well, I think, obviously Vasilevsky's a bigger man than Patrick Roy, and the equipment was fitting accordingly. But at the time that Patrick played, I mean, the equipment rules weren't as heavily enforced, and some of them were even different rules at the time. But I think they're, both those goalies, both Roy and Vasilevsky, probably push everything to the limit that they can, both physically, mentally, and tactically, and as well with their equipment. So trying to give every advantage that they possibly can. They're both, Patrick more so an innovator when it came to equipment, but understanding that you can take advantage of having equipment that's functional and that works. And, with Francois Allaire and Patrick working together on all of that stuff, it did make a difference in his game. And like I said before, the guys that are playing today are benefiting from those innovations that have happened in the past. And we all seen the pictures of Vasilevsky and how, big people said his equipment looked, but he's a big man that's wearing equipment that is regulation for himself. And as you talked about guys wearing their chest protector inside their pants or outside his pants. It's not a rule whether you can wear it one way or the other. And if you can get the advantage wearing it in a certain fashion, then that's all the benefit to, his preparation and his way of thinking about the game.
You believe Andre Vasilevsky is the best goalie in the world today?
I think it's debatable because of what we talked about before, having having the team that he's on. I think that he has, the stars are aligned for him to have great success. You go through their lineup top to bottom. I mean, do they have the best defensemen in hockey? Do they have some of the best forwards in hockey? They have, one of the best goaltenders in hockey, all on the same team at the same time. And not only that, all in their prime.
I'll say this. We're getting a little bit of feedback here, but okay, it's better now. I think if Carey Price played for Tampa and Vasilevsky played for Montreal, Price would have won the cup with Tampa. But I do believe at this stage of their careers, with the biggest difference being age and health, that Vasilevsky is the best goalie in the world. Agree? No, because of age and health? I don't want to put you on the spot.
I'll agree with you that if the positions were switched and Carey was playing for Tampa Bay and Andre Vasilevsky was playing for Montreal, Carey Price would win a Stanley Cup. And I feel that Carey playing, I feel that, we can't talk about what if, but we are. I feel that with the mindset and the approach and everything that Carey does bring to the table, if he played in Tampa, he would be just as successful numbers-wise with Vasilevsky, if not better.
All right. I'm curious to hear what you're going to say here. When you analyze goalies, what are the criterias that you look at? What are the different categories that you look at? Obviously, you look at the handling of the puck, which is one thing, but name me all the things off the top of your head that you can think of that if you were to scout a goalie, you would look at. I think we're going to have fun here.
Depending on what I'm scouting the goalie for, that would come into play, and whether it's a guy that I'm looking for potential or someone's asking advice on a trade for an already established goaltender. So the question is going to be based on what am I actually looking at that goalie for. The biggest thing that I tell people for if I'm doing a scouting assignment, or I'm looking for a guy that I don't have to look for. That's what I'm looking for. A guy that does things well. And we go back to the two guys that we're talking about, like, for example, for Carey, every category of his game is super efficient and he does it really well. Are there guys that do some things better in certain categories? Probably there are, but across the board, he's a balanced goaltender that has strengths and in all areas of his game. For example, Vasilevsky, he has, tremendous athletic ability, tremendous flexibility, reads the play extremely well, brings a lot of things like that to the table. His game isn't as polished or as fine-tuned as like, say, Carey or or some of the other guys that are super strong technical goaltenders in the game.
That was probably Carey calling you right now. Okay, so I heard what your answer was, so let me rephrase it. The stats say that Andrei Vasilevsky in his first 7 years in the National Hockey League is better than Patrick Roy. Besides the stats now, if we actually take a deep dive into it, I'm trying to figure out who's actually better if we forget about the stats. So on what basis would we actually compare them? We would take a look at athleticism, like you just talked about.
Yeah.
We take a look at puck handling.
Yeah.
Would we take a look at innovation? What would we be looking at exactly?
Well, if we're just going to compare for who's a better goaltender compared to the time they played, I don't think it's fair to compare a guy that played 25 years ago to a guy that's playing now. I think the players now across the board are better. I just really believe that top to bottom, the league has improved. And if it hasn't, we have a major problem. But
okay, perfect. I like where you're going. So bigger degree of difficulty for Vasilevsky in that respect, correct?
100%.
Okay. Shooters equipment being better, which are the hockey sticks. So bigger degree of for Vasilevsky there, correct?
Correct.
Equipment being bigger now than it used to be. So that's a bigger degree of difficulty for Patrick Roy. So I'll give him the edge there. Would we agree?
Okay.
So now we're 2-1 Vasilevsky. What other categories are we looking at before we determine who the guy really is here?
I'm going to look at separation between his peer group. And I feel that if you're comparing it time for time and then for then and now for now, I'm going to have to go with Patrick because his innovation and he was ahead of everyone else. He was just flat out better than basically any other goaltender in the game for a period of time, a substantial period of time.
Yeah,
you know, and playing well at the right times. And yes, Vasilevsky has won on this great team, but we understand when Patrick Roy came in '86 and what he did as a 19-year-old or 20. Was he 19 or was he 20?
Yeah, I'm not sure, but one or the other.
Yeah,
maybe even yeah. I think he was. Anyway, I'll look it up, but I'm not sure if he was 19 or 20. But anyway, he was one of those.
Yeah, so he came into the league. He's playing in a place that's a lot more difficult to play in than a U.S. market. He came in, he won the Stanley Cup, he won multiple Vezina trophies, he won. He led his team. He had the run with the overtime wins. All that kind of stuff speaks volumes for Patrick Roy's domination at the time that he played.
Yeah, so he was, let me get this straight. So he was born in 1965, and he plays a game with the Canadiens in the 84-85 season. He plays 47 games in 85-86. So 85 season, born in 65. So he was about 20 years old. If not 20, he was just a couple of days before. So put it at 20 years old for Patrick Roy.
I mean, that in itself is very impressive, obviously. And his personality, he just flat out innovation of the game and dominant throughout his career.
So if you take a look at the 84-85 season, when he actually once again, or 85-86 season, pardon me, when he started 47 games. So 85, so 86, 87, 88, 89, 90, 91, 92. The 93 season when he won the Stanley Cup is not in the 7th year because that's the 8th year. So if you take a look at Patrick Roy winning the Cup in 86, going to the Cup final in 1989, losing out to the Calgary Flames. In those 7 years of Patrick Roy with the Canadiens, from 86 to 92, and Vasilevsky's first 7 years, we can agree that Vasilevsky played on a better team.
100%.
So in conclusion, the stats say that Vasilevsky in his first 7 seasons was better than Patrick Roy, but we believe, or you believe, that Patrick Roy in his first 7 seasons, because of all the reasons we just talked about, was actually better than Vasilevsky. Is that fair?
That's fair.
So we have ourselves a podcast, and there you have it. He is Eli Wilson, and I want to give out your email, your website, EliWilsonGoaltending.com, and you continue to work with goalies even throughout the year, even when they're with their respective teams and they have their own goalie coach. Are you still working with goalies?
Yeah, like with the National Hockey League guys, I do video work with them and make sure that I see all of their games and stuff like that, so we can constantly have feedback, or sometimes not constantly, sometimes when it's just needed. And then obviously we're on the ice throughout the winter, not quite as much as we are in the summer, where we ramp up and have our camps through July and August, and work with goalies of all ages and all skill levels, from 8-9-year-old kids just learning the position and getting started to some of the best goaltenders in the world. So we cover it all.
They're having a big celebration in Montreal right now because he said Patrick Roy. They would have been devastated if he would have said Andre Vasilevsky. And for a big celebration in Montreal, Sophistication Event Rentals, live music, DJ sound systems, tents, chairs, tables, decor, lighting, photo booth, TV screens, 514-570-5770 is the number. It's your one-stop shop. All right, once again, EliWilsonGoaltending.com. I love picking your goaltending brain. You're absolutely fantastic. I hope we can do this again, bud.
Thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it. It was a lot of fun.
All right. It's the Sick Podcast. Until next time, cheers.